Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into some serious strategic thinking today. Ancient China, military strategy. But hold on, we're not talking Sun Tzu.
Right. This is even older, going way back to a founder of Chinese thought, Master Taigong, his own Art of War.
Wow, okay, so before Sun Tzu even. That's fascinating. What's the game plan for today?
We're tackling Chapter 13. It's called Martial Strategy Initiating Action.
So taking action, but I'm guessing it's not just charging into battle.
Not quite. Taigong was all about this nuanced approach. Think observation, wisdom, like a strategic chess match.
Okay, see, that's what I love about this stuff. It's not just about brute force. So, paint us a picture. What's the setup for this chapter?
All right, so picture this. King Wen, he's got a serious problem on his hands.
Oh, what kind of problem?
The Shang King. This guy was a tyrant, brutal, oppressive, the whole 9 yards.
Not good.
Nope, not at all. King Wen, though, he wanted something different. Justice, harmony, a better way to rule.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So he turns to Taigong, like, help me fix this mess.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Taigong doesn't just jump into battle plans. First, he says, cultivate virtue, listen to wise counsel, and watch the ways of heaven and humanity.
Heaven and humanity. I'm intrigued, but also a little confused. What did he mean by that?
Think of it this way. Heaven is the natural order, the big picture. Humanity is the social, moral side of things.
Ah, okay. So Taigong's saying understand the whole context before you even think about acting.
Exactly. Don't just jump into conflict. He even says, only when you see heavenly disasters and human calamities, then make plans.
So, like, only act when it's absolutely necessary. Choose your battles. Got it.
Yeah.
But then there's that line about seeing what is evident and what is hidden. What's that all about? Sounds a little mysterious.
Okay, imagine a chess game, right? The pieces on the board, that's the evident.
Okay, makes sense.
But the hidden, that's the strategy, the intentions, what your opponent's thinking.
Ah, so like psychology almost. Trying to understand what's going on beneath the surface.
Exactly. To make the best decisions, you gotta see both sides.
So we've got this idea of heaven, humanity, picking your battles carefully. But then Taigong says, to win completely without fighting, to engage in war without injury. Wait, hold up. How do you win without even fighting?
Right, it sounds kind of crazy, but what he means is you win through strategy, diplomacy, really knowing your opponent's weak points.
So you're basically defeating them before the fighting even starts.
Right. Think about it. This isn't just about armies. It's about avoiding unnecessary conflict altogether.
So, like, finding a smarter solution? That's pretty forward-thinking for a military text.
Totally. It still applies today. Think about how many arguments or conflicts happen just because people don't understand each other.
Yeah, I see that all the time.
Taigong's way is different. Wisdom over force. Winning through understanding.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. But how would someone actually put this winning without fighting idea into practice? Like, can you give me a real-world example?
Sure. Let's say you're in a business negotiation. Instead of being super aggressive, try Taigong's way.
Okay, so how would that work?
Observe the other side. Try to get their motivations. Find a solution that worked for both of you.
Ah, so finding common ground instead of trying to crush them.
Right. That way everyone wins and you avoid that whole destructive conflict.
Interesting. So Taigong's saying the biggest wins might happen before the real fight even starts.
Totally. It's picking your battles, seeing the long game, and using strategy and smarts to reach your goals peacefully.
Wow, that's pretty insightful. But Taigong didn't just talk about strategy, right? He also had some interesting things to say about leadership.
Oh, absolutely. He was big on this idea of leadership that benefits the entire world, not just one person. He even said, he who does not take from the people takes for the people.
That's a powerful statement. Especially back then when most rulers were all about taking what they could get.
Right, but Taigong, he flips the script. He's saying, true power is about serving others, not exploiting them.
So a more ethical, selfless approach to leadership.
Exactly. The leader's job is to lift people up, to guide them, to make things better for everyone.
It makes you wonder, what would the world be like if more leaders thought that way today? It's a good question. But how do you actually put that philosophy into action? And how do you know if a society is going down the wrong path?
Well, Taigong gives us some clues. He talks about weeds overtaking crops and crookedness prevailing over righteousness.
So he's saying, like, when corruption takes over and self-interest trumps everything else, that's when you know things are bad.
Exactly. He's describing what was happening under the Shang dynasty. The reason King Wen needed help in the first place.
Makes you think about what weeds we need to be watching out for in our own world.
Yeah, definitely something to think about. But Taigong doesn't just leave us with doom and gloom. He ends this chapter with a message of hope.
Oh, good. What's the message?
He says the power of virtue, righteousness, strength, those things can overcome even the toughest situations.
So even when things look really bad, there's still hope.
Right. He believed in the power of good to win out in the end.
That's really encouraging. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I gotta ask about this bird of prey analogy. Taigong talks about it flying low and folding its wings.
Ah, yes. The bird of prey. That's a great example of how he uses these vivid images to explain his ideas.
So what do you think he's trying to get at with this analogy? What does the bird represent?
It's about patience, strategic timing, waiting for the perfect moment to act. Like, the bird doesn't just attack randomly. It circles, observes, then bam, strikes when the time is right.
So it's not about rushing in, more like holding back, watching, then making your move when you know you'll succeed.
Exactly. And that applies to way more than just fighting. Think about business negotiations, even personal relationships.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to jump the gun in those situations.
Right. It's all about choosing your moment wisely. Sometimes that means waiting. Sometimes it means acting decisively. It's amazing how something written so long ago can still be relevant today.
I know, right? It's like Taigong was tapped into some universal truths about human nature. We were talking about leadership and how Taigong had a very different view from a lot of rulers back then.
Oh, yeah. He was all about wisdom, virtue, genuinely caring for the people you lead. Total opposite of the Shang King's tyranny.
Right. It wasn't about power grabbing for Taigong.
Nope. He was like, true power comes from service, from helping others, not using them.
So a leader's job is to make things better for everyone, not just themselves.
Exactly. Guide them, uplift them, that kind of thing. It makes you wonder, what if more leaders thought like that today?
Good question. But like, how do you actually live that out? How can you tell if a society's going in the wrong direction?
Well, Taigong gives us some signs to watch out for. He uses this imagery of weeds overtaking crops and crookedness prevailing over righteousness.
So basically, when corruption and selfishness take over, that's when you know things are going bad.
Right. He's describing exactly what was happening under the Shang dynasty. That's why King Wen needed Taigong's help.
It's like a warning, right? What weeds do we need to be pulling up in our own world? Makes you think.
Definitely. But Taigong wasn't all doom and gloom. He also offered hope.
Oh, phew. Good. What did he say?
He said, even in the darkest times, the power of virtue, righteousness, those things can overcome anything.
So there's always hope, even when things seem really bad.
Exactly. He believed good would always triumph in the end.
I like that. It's encouraging. But, okay, before we go too far, I keep thinking about that bird of prey analogy. Flying low, folding its wings, that whole thing.
Yeah, the bird of prey. He loved to use these strong images to make his point.
So what was he getting at? What's the deeper meaning there?
It's all about patience, timing, knowing when to act and when to hold back. The bird doesn't just randomly strike. It circles, watches, waits for the right moment.
So it's more calculated. You're not just reacting emotionally, you're making a strategic move.
Exactly. And that applies to so many things. Think about business or even how you handle personal relationships.
Yeah, sometimes it's better to hold back, observe, and then make your move when the time is right.
Right. Sometimes the best move is no move at all. It's about knowing when to wait and when to act.
So calculated risks, basically, and knowing that every action or inaction has an impact.
Exactly. And, you know, that idea of observing and understanding, that can really help in relationships, too.
Oh, yeah, totally. Like, think about how many arguments happen because of miscommunication.
All the time. If people just took a moment to try and see things from the other person's perspective.
Right. Instead of jumping to conclusions, try to understand where they're coming from.
Exactly. And that leads to empathy and building trust, which are key for any good relationship.
It all comes back to that idea that Taigong talked about. He who does not take from the people takes for the people.
Yes, that's the heart of his philosophy, that sense of shared responsibility. He also said, sharing in suffering, aiding each other, resonating with empathy, achieving together. This is how to cultivate virtue and secure the world.
Wow, so powerful. He's basically saying we're all in this together, and true success comes from cooperation, not trying to win at all costs.
Right. He was way ahead of his time in that sense. And, you know, it's more relevant than ever in our world today.
It makes you wonder why more leaders don't embrace that kind of thinking.
It's like we've been trained to think it's all about competition, winner takes all.
Yeah, the zero-sum game. But Taigong is offering a different way.
Exactly. Real success comes from working together, understanding each other, and wanting what's best for everyone.
It's like we've forgotten the power of unity.
Maybe. That's why it's so important to revisit these ancient teachings. They remind us that there's another way.
They challenge us to think differently, to see things from a new perspective.
And maybe, just maybe, by rediscovering those principles, we can create a better world.
That's a great thought. It's like these ancient wisdom traditions are giving us a roadmap for a better future. Remember that bird of prey image we talked about?
Yeah, flying low and folding its wings.
What do you think it means? Like, what's the message behind it?
It's the core of Taigong's strategy. Patience, choosing the right moment, acting decisively.
It's like that quiet moment before a storm, the calm before something big happens.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, where else in our lives could we apply that principle?
Right. Like, are we rushing into things when we should be waiting? Or maybe we're holding back when we should be taking action.
It's a constant balancing act, finding that sweet spot between action and inaction.
Taigong would probably say it's all part of the journey, right? Learning, adapting, striving for that subtle victory that comes from wisdom and doing the right thing.
He would. And as we continue this deep dive into his art of war, we'll find even more insights into strategy, leadership, and how to live a more meaningful life.
We've covered a lot of ground with Taigong. This art of war, it's got so much to unpack. Winning without fighting, good leadership, timing.
And how it all connects to, business, relationships, all that.
Right. It's not just some ancient military manual. But before we wrap this up, there's one more thing I got to ask about. Righteousness. Taigong talks about it a lot.
Yeah, righteousness. It's like the foundation of everything he's saying. Remember, King Wen was dealing with a tyrant.
Right, the Shang king.
Taigong's advice wasn't just go attack. It was about being virtuous, making sure your actions are for the greater good.
So it's not just about winning at all costs. There is a moral dimension to his strategy.
Exactly. Taigong believed that real victory, the kind that lasts, comes from acting in harmony with what he called the way.
The way. That's a big concept in Chinese philosophy, right? Like being in tune with the natural order of things.
Exactly. And for Taigong, that meant your actions should benefit everyone, not just yourself. True power comes from serving others.
Which is why he was so against what the Shang king was doing. Exploiting everyone for his own benefit.
Right. A true leader, according to Taigong, doesn't take from the people, they take for the people. Their actions should help everyone, not just themselves.
It's like he's saying, leadership should be about ethics and compassion, putting people first.
Absolutely. And that idea, it's inspired people for centuries. It's about making the world a better, fairer place.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that real strength isn't about brute force. It's about using your power to do good in the world.
And that makes you think about what kind of leaders we need today. With all the problems we're facing, we need people who are guided by justice, compassion, actually caring about everyone.
People who get that real success is about the positive impact you have, not just what you gain for yourself.
Exactly. Leaders who will listen, work together, do the right thing, even when it's hard.
Now, Taigong was also realistic. He knew the world could be a tough place. He talked about how to tell if a nation was going downhill, things like weeds overtaking crops, crookedness prevailing over righteousness.
He was painting a picture of what happens when a society loses its way. When corruption and selfishness take over, nothing good can grow.
It's a scary thought. And it makes you wonder if we're seeing those same weeds popping up in our own world today.
It's definitely something to consider. What forces are working against us? Are we holding on to justice and fairness? Are we working together to build a better future? These are the questions Taigong makes us ask.
That's a lot to think about. Sometimes it feels overwhelming, like there's so much to fix.
I know what you mean. But Taigong wasn't all doom and gloom. He ended this chapter with a message of hope.
Okay, good. What did he say?
He said that even when things seem really dark, there's always hope.
Because good will always triumph over evil. Is that what he meant?
He believed that the power of virtue, of doing what's right, could overcome anything. It starts with each of us. Making good choices, using our voices to make things better, even in small ways.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Taigong, what's the main takeaway for our listeners?
I think the most important thing to remember is this. Real victory, the kind that brings lasting peace and happiness, it's not about conquering or dominating. It's about making choices that are good for everyone, not just yourself.
It's like understanding that we're all connected and our choices affect other people. If we work together, with wisdom, compassion, and doing the right thing, then we can build a better future.
That's a great way to put it. I think Taigong would agree.
So for everyone listening, as you go about your day, think about the challenges you're facing. How could you use Taigong's ideas to find better solutions? Remember, the biggest victories often happen not on the battlefield, but in those moments when you choose to do the right thing.
And maybe, just maybe, if enough of us do that, we can create a world where true peace wins out.
That's a great thought to leave us with. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep striving for those victories that come from living a life of purpose.